All right, welcome to Buddy Book Club. I'm Dylan, here with Keith and Bob, special guest. What's up, buddies?
What's up, guys?
Ew.
Here on the Buddy Book Club, we're breaking down some bestsellers, and this week we'll be discussing The Terminal List by Jack Carr. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us about any past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, or slide into our DMs on Twitter or Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes and Spotify, so please download and subscribe. So Terminal List, it was a recommendation from Bob, hence why Bob's on, although we'd have Bob on for any episode. But since it was his recommendation, we wanted to have him on, and it recently came out on Amazon, like this week, right?
July 1st, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you haven't started either, maybe you want to read the book first. According to Keith, the show's like 40% different. So, maybe read the book first and feel it out from there. But basically, Terminal List is like Steve Buscemi's character from Billy Madison, like his backstory, right? He just has a list. He's putting lipstick on his face and going around shooting people, right?
That sounds about right.
Okay, cool.
That covers
it. So we're going to jump in with some stock up, stock down. Where we're going to talk about, we got a few categories, but stock up, stock down, Bob's going to hang out with us for. And we're going to kind of talk about, what stocks we're buying after buying and selling, after reading or listening to The Terminal List. So Keith, get us the vibe going. Start us off. What do you have for stock up?
Yeah, stock up. First one, driving American muscle cars, stock up.
Okay.
I mean, the car that you drive, and especially in this book, kind of tells you a lot about the person. If you're driving a brand new Bentley, a Mercedes, a BMW, if you're all about the new things, you're an un-American hippie terrorist, pretty much, right? I mean, and I know you guys drive, D-Man, you drive a Chevy Bolt, and Bob drives a VW Bug, so both of you guys fit in that category, but both unpatriotic cowards, that's typical of you guys. But if you're into new cars, get the fuck out of here, you're a piece of shit. If you're into old Mustangs, old Land Rovers, pickup trucks, 2011 gray Nissan Sentras, you're a good guy. You're loyal, you're willing to get your hands dirty, you know how to change your oil. You're just a true patriot, and especially the 2011 gray Nissan Sentra. But stock up American muscle cars, stock up being American and patriot like myself.
Side note, Keith drives a Toyota Prius, but...
How dare you, sir?
Yeah, I drive a Mazda hatchback, so, I'm probably like a lesbian or something. I don't know what I am. But actually, one of my favorite stories, Keith, is that you didn't realize, talk about, being able to change your own oil and all that stuff. You didn't realize that you need fluid, to turn your steering wheel, and you just went on thinking you just had this real muscle car because it was hard to turn your steering wheel, but in fact you just didn't have any steering fluid in there.
Was that me? I feel like you're
no, that was you told me that story and I was like, oh my god, that is hilarious.
There was that might have been brake lines.
Oh.
At one point the brakes were just not working and I was like, this is weird, and there was your brake line fluid is gone. I was like, what do you need that for? But it's all the same.
That's a wild card move. Yeah, well, to tie into that, my first stock up is just Toyota stock. This might be the first time ever we're talking about an actual stock you can purchase on stock up, stock down. But the Land Cruiser is mentioned maybe every other page. It's how badass his Land Cruiser is.
Is it Land Cruiser or Land Rover?
No, Land Cruiser.
I think you're right. I think it is a Land Cruiser now that you say that.
Yeah, totally different. Totally different.
Shit. Okay. So not the British company, right?
Yeah, totally different car. The Land Rover is the actual sport utility of the Range Rover, where the Toyota Land Cruiser is quite different. They actually stopped making this supposedly, but I looked it up. The 2021 Land Cruisers were $80,000. I was like, holy shit, I didn't know Toyota. Yeah, the bad guy, when he's trying to find him, he's like, dang it, he drives this old Land Cruiser where it doesn't have GPS tracking. It's just an amazing vehicle that can do anything. And then at one point, James Reece like, oh, if only I was driving my Land Cruiser, I could jump the median on this highway. It's like, wait, what? Does a Land Cruiser have go-go gadget arms? I didn't even understand it. But anyway, I know I wanted one, so I was looking it up, how can I buy a used one? Because he's like, oh, this thing will drive for 1 million miles as long as you take care of it. And obviously, as you said, James Reece knows how to change his oil. So I might not only buy Toyota stock, but buy Land Cruisers. And also shame on you, Toyota, for getting out of the market by canceling Land Cruisers. They don't make them anymore. Bob, what do you have for stock up?
Yeah, so tying into everything you guys just talked about, stock up on the most all-American thing in the world, Navy SEALs. I mean, pure muscle, pure stallion. biggest units on the planet. They're protecting our beaches. Unlike Keith, keeping our beaches, I guess Keith keeps our beaches kind of safe because no girls going on it when he's there. But outside of that, you know, it's the most all-American thing in the world, I'd say. So, yeah, Navy SEALs stock up.
Keith's so pasty, though, that he's kind of like a lighthouse. You know, they use him for a landmarker.
I know, I'm giving like the greenhouse effect. So they're getting hit by the sun bounces off, I hit back at them. They're getting double tan. You want me around, kid. I'm a utility on the beach. What are you talking about?
Got it, you're a Swiss Army knife for the beach. Got it.
I found him more of like a mile marker. Like when James Reece is zeroing in with his rifle and he's like shooting at rocks, like, oh, this thing's 100 meters away, this thing's 200. He'd be over his comm being like, yeah, pasty freckle guy, 150 meters. Like, okay. Yeah, I see it. He's a landmark for these guys.
He's
very
beacon.
important to have him around.
Right.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
right.
Exactly.
So I'll take it. So I'm helping James Reece out where Bob is driving a terrorist car. Okay, we're on the same page here.
Speaking about Navy SEALs, did you guys ever see the BUDS? You know, the Navy SEAL training is BUDS, like basic underwater demolition. They had a like Discovery Channel miniseries about one of the classes. I want to say it's like class 234 or something like that. Like a 8-part miniseries about the entire training. I guess they just let Discovery come in and film it. Any of you guys see that?
I haven't, but I want to watch it now.
Oh, yeah. I think it's probably now because everything has their own streaming service. It's probably only available on like Discovery Plus. But it was wild. Like seeing this stuff is like, all of this seems extremely illegal. Like the worst frat hazing that has ever existed. But it was wild. Yeah, it's just like as you're watching it, it's like not only is the like actual like workouts and the stuff they make these guys do absurd, but just down to them checking their room. They get room checks every morning or whatever, and if someone has a little bit of sand in their drawer, it's like, okay, go out in the hallway and do push-ups until you die. And if you somehow survive, because they really mean like do them until you die. If you somehow survive, it's like, okay, cool. You can now get into the next day. It's one of those things where we watch these movies, Zero Dark 30, even like the old Navy SEALs movie, but you see all this stuff, you're like, wow, how do these guys get so badass? They definitely started badass, but the BUDS training program is absurd. Definitely worth a watch. There's some people that are like, yeah, this is my 5th time trying to do this. It's like, what? How?
Don't they drown you during the training?
That's part of it.
And revive you?
Yeah.
I'm out way before that, so...
Yeah, well, some people don't need to get revived, but you definitely like underwater to the point where you're like choking on water. And also, to be clear for everyone listening, in case there just happens to be one Navy SEAL listening, we don't know anything. We're laymen. We could have this all completely wrong, but either way, we appreciate it. It's totally badass. I sleep easier at night knowing there's some crazy frogmen out there. Keith, what else do you have for stock up?
Stock up the phrase on the nose. So, really, I don't actually know what that phrase means, or I don't really understand it. Nonetheless, I feel like this book was very on the nose, if that makes any sense. The bad guys versus the good guys in this, where everything was so kind of obvious. I don't know if that's the way to... Or on the nose. There's the word. All right, there we go.
It was pretty black and white.
Yeah, exactly. There's no shades of gray in any sense. There's no ambiguity in any sense for who the bad guys and the good guys were. At one point, Hartley just, for no reason, yells, "Fuck the Constitution!" I mean, come on. This people like that were like, pro-Constitution, pro-American. I'm a big American guy. I'm not. There's no one that's bigger than me. Even those people have to be rolling their eyes at some of the shit that was going on in this, right? Yeah. And then also Ben being a bad guy. Spoilers, sorry, he's a bad guy. I knew that. It was obvious to me. Why? Because all the good guys are literally like best men, loyal, family guys, distrust the media and government. Ben, on the other hand, says at one point like, "Oh, I really didn't like what Edward Snowden did and I really like the Patriot Act." And I was like, what? Like every single other person in the book is vehemently opposed to that. And so you knew right away, like, okay, there's something off with him there. Then the next thing, Liz is like, "Oh, he hit on me when he was married." And I was like, oh, so Ben's just a bad guy. Like by that middle of the book, I'd already started knowing, oh, Ben's a bad guy. You want some shades of gray with these guys. They can't just be all perfect or all bad.
Yeah, it was one of those things like if you couldn't write a country music song about their actions, then they were probably a bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you're making some assumptions about Ben, Keith, that led you in the right direction, but yeah, I guess you're probably right. It's probably a little more black and white than I remember. Definitely a little bit more than Vince Flynn's work, but still pretty great.
I mean, a lot of this stuff is like the torch is passed from Vince Flynn, which we love Vince Flynn, obviously. I feel like also a lot of the bad guys in Vince Flynn's books were kind of grounded a little bit in some sense of like, hey, he grew up in this area and the teachings were this, and like America actually did do these things that weren't necessarily great in his region. So you can see why he started to become a guy that does not like America. And you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It wasn't just like, fuck the Constitution. I want to piss on that document. It's like, why? It's like, because I'm a bad person. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, like the Islamic guy that got radicalized by our own government. It was just like, wait, what? It's like he boxes and he doesn't mind living in squalor because he's used to living in squalor in his shithole country. So he's willing to
I'm not going to lie, though. Do you know what that reminded me of, though? The Boston Marathon bombing guy.
That's right on point.
He was a wannabe boxer who got into those like deep internet things where he got turned into a terrorist. He convinced his little bro to do it with him. Big piece of shit. And obviously we know the rest of that story. But when I heard about that character, I was like, that's what that reminds me of.
That's a good call out.
So not super unrealistic to me.
Yeah, actually, that is a good point. It's only like you need the Secretary of Defense like hitting him up on Yahoo Chat, being like, Allah is not down with these Americans, right? He's like, yeah, I guess you are right. Yeah, Secretary of Defense. My next stock up was Call of Duty, the video game series. And I say this because I probably wouldn't have understood half of the things that Reece was talking about in terms of equipment and weapon systems if it wasn't for Call of Duty. Because he's like saying out these random guns and also being like, oh, like this truck can stop 7.62 bullets. Doesn't explain that at all. And I think that this book is obviously written by a Navy SEAL or former Navy SEAL and probably was meant for that kind of group. I don't know if he thought it was going to blow up into what it became, but good for him for doing so. So maybe we're not necessarily the target market, but a normal person would be like, wait, what does that mean? For me, I'm like, oh, I play Call of Duty, so I know that 7.62 has way bigger stopping power than like a 5.56. So I'm on board. Hence, Call of Duty helped me understand this book a little bit more. So I appreciated that. Call of Duty stock up. Hopefully the next iteration's actually good.
I love that stock up.
Yeah, I also thought that was cool that he knew his war history, right? Like he would like reference a lot of stuff, and I was like, all right, that's pretty badass. That he wasn't just like, I'm a SEAL, so I can just say all this shit and have comedy. He was like, oh, here's all this like history stuff I've read on wars.
Yeah, well, also SEALs in general, like he says in the book, most of them have college degrees. Most of them have like wanted to do this their entire life. Not that lots of people in the military aren't smart, but they're people who go on to have very successful careers outside of the SEAL teams. Yeah. So I think the idea of him being well-read on history, specifically military history, like very much ties in. And I'm not sure if Jack Carr is himself. I would assume so, but I'm sure he knew lots of guys in the SEALs who, you know, knew everything. Even his buddy that calls him at one point is like, yeah, you've been reading your Sun Tzu. It's like, yeah, of course. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz. Of course you guys know these things.
Yeah.
So I found Jack Carr on a podcast. He was talking about the release of Terminal List. I forget when this came out, a couple of years ago or whatever. And I think the thing that really drew me to want to read the book beyond him being a Navy SEAL that was writing a fiction book like this, he talked about this in the podcast where he was talking about the book. He really likes describing history of stuff like you guys are talking about, history of war, and also down to the exact specs of weapons they use, boots they use, gear, all that kind of stuff, and the tactical stuff, because it makes it much more realistic, because he actually lived that life. And he said that James Reece was a combination of like a couple SEALs he knew. Obviously, don't quote me on this stuff, because I listened to this a long time ago. Jack Carr's probably going to be like, that's not exactly accurate, but, you know, I thought it was pretty cool that, he, like, unlike authors who are getting stuff secondhand and then writing these types of books, he has all that really in-depth knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, the tomahawk uses, like, it's got a mahogany shaft, same as the Wampanoag Indians used. He's straight out of, like, The Patriot with Mel Gibson. I mean, he actually kind of does the same thing. But, yeah, it was wild. It was great. Bob, what else did you have for stock up?
Yeah, so you actually somehow just read my mind. Stock up tomahawks.
Oh, I did read your mind.
One of my favorite scenes in a film ever is Mel Gibson going on an absolute rampage in The Patriot and just throwing a tomahawk through a guy's head. And I'd say that James Reece had a couple of things like that in this book, that in just the description of tomahawks are badass. I definitely wouldn't know how to wield one. Keith would definitely kill himself with one by accident. But, for me, that was just like encapsulating a seal really well.
Dad, why have you never told us what you did at Fort Wilderness?
It's a great call out from Bob, except for the whole tomahawk me killing myself with one. I'd fucking dominate with one of those. But has there ever been a bad tomahawk scene? Has there ever been one pulled out and not a scene that's been amazing after that? Like, I think Last of the Mohegans.
I was about to say the only other thing I could think of is Last of the Mohegans, which was perfect.
Other than FSU using it all the time. That chant is so cool when the Braves used to use it and FSU used it occasionally. But they overkilled it. They use it like every single down if you've ever watched an FSU game.
It's another good movie with that is with the Mel Gibson. He directed it.
Oh, Apocalypto. Although they have more like war clubs. Is there tomahawks in there? Or are they like war clubs?
I thought one of the tribes was like crushing people with tomahawks, if I remember correctly. But I might be just like imagining that.
Either way, Apocalypto, crazy movie. Like the war club stuff, very graphic. Can't watch it with the fiance there, Bob.
No, yeah, we're not watching that film. Actually, we did watch that film together, but...
Oh, I appreciate that. She's a keeper. Keith, what else did you ever stock up?
Tomahawks was my only last one.
Oh,
there, so
wow, we all had some Tomahawk love. Quick one that I had was friendship. So, a lot of this stuff with Reece, like he would have got nowhere if it wasn't for some good friends. And I'd say real friends. There's friends, there's good friends, and there's real friends. And real friends give you an escort into Mexico and let you murder a dozen gangbangers and prostitutes. That's my line. So I think we here on this podcast are good friends, because I don't know if any of you guys would do that for me, but I'm hoping in my life that I get a real friend, because I really want to murder gangbangers and prostitutes in Mexico and then have them give me $100,000 and say, nice job.
Yeah.
No doubt.
All right, I got one last one, and it's pretty simple. People are kind of down on killing these days, but killing, stock's going way up for that, because according to Reece, it's one of the most natural things a person can do. No, not eating, not pooing, not sexing, but killing. Killing is one of the most natural things someone do. And killing isn't about taking lives, man. It's about saving lives. You dig? Because that's what Reece says. And I thought that was pretty crazy, but amazing. He's literally cutting a guy's stomach open like seppuku nature, straight Japanese feudalist society, tying the guy's entrails to a tree and making him run around it, and he's sitting there going, this is how I save lives. This is how I save lives, by killing him. And then on top of that, he, at the end, when I think it's Katie, right, she has the bomb around her neck, and she's like, how did you know that the bomb wasn't going to go off? He's like, I didn't. It was like, oh. I
like that, actually. I actually really like that.
No, I liked it. I liked it a lot, but it just didn't really tie into his earlier idea about how killing those people is saving lives. I mean, it worked out, for sure. But in theory, if they all died, whose life?
Well, he hates the media, so, I mean, you lose one, it's really a win, right, at that point?
It definitely hates the leftist media. But let's get into some stock down.
With your intestine one where he's like twisting the guy, can we talk about who he did that to? It was like the lowest level guy.
Yeah.
He decided to torture the absolute most. I think it was Howard, who is like the guy below the general.
It was the JAG, so it was like the attorney for Howard.
There's a guy that was like carrying out orders.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah. It was like, I'm like, why is this guy getting this treatment? It should have been the Mexican cartel guy.
But did he give the order to kill his wife and kid? Because if he did, it makes a little bit more sense.
It wasn't even. It was like his lackey. It'd be like James Bond doing that to Oddjob and not like the boss of whatever that movie was. It didn't really tie in.
It was awesome either way.
But I did also appreciate, talking back to military history, how he was like, yes, this was also used by Native Americans and this was also used by someone else. So I'm just picturing him like reading some history book, that has some brutal torture in it, and he's like, oh, this is where I should take a note. Like, this is where I need to take a note. Because
on one of his daughter's drawings, he's like, let me put it here, actually.
Yeah, grabs a crayon, grabs like a purple crayon, and is like taking notes. Like, just in case I ever get into a situation where I have to make some guy run around a tree with his intestines hanging out, like, I know exactly what to do.
Not to give away spoilers of the show, but the show is pretty legit. There's a couple of scenes that they keep in there that you're like, fuck yeah.
Oh,
the movement, like, I've only seen the first 3 episodes, I think, but even the movements are really cool. Like, D-Man, I know you were talking about, like, Navy SEAL show, and I think Jack Carr actually trained Chris Pratt pretty thoroughly, like, how to move like a Navy SEAL and everything. Like, Keith, do you remember that stairwell scene where he's, like, getting into the apartment complex?
Yeah, no, the show is definitely, they do a good job.
Yeah, they were pretty on it.
It's a little, there's obviously unrealistic still, but it's like you don't doubt that the people in it are military people.
Yeah, well, I think at this point Chris Pratt has had enough training. He was in Zero Dark 30, granted he had a small role, but I'm sure he was like part of that training. And then he did obviously with the Jurassic Park, which I think he was a Navy SEAL that became a Jurassic Park Ranger, so I'm sure he got some like weapons training in that. And then he had another one that I can't remember, but either way.
Parks and Rec, so that was another big
one. That was what it was, yeah. During his mouse rat training.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into Stock Down. Keith, what do we have for Stock Down?
Well, I'm going to keep it the same theme that you just had and say Stock Down Garth Brooks.
Oh.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Garth Brooks, but I didn't really know him until college. Let's be honest. Friends in Low Places is a fire song. It's an amazing song. But at the end of the day, it's a lie. You need friends in high places. D-Man just pointed it out. You need a Ben that's a computer genius that can like hack into things and find you all this information, even though he's a traitor.
A frenemy.
You need Liz. You need a pilot that has unlimited funds and can fly you everywhere on private jets. You need a Marco who can just hand you $100,000 and knows how to track down every single Mexican gang and gives you all the information you need. You need people that can just go out and get you bomb material, not blow your cover. It's like, wow, these people are all willing to risk their life in prison for you, and they're all at the top of their games and everything. It's like, this is what you need for friends. So, Bob, you're out, kid. D-Man, we'll see. I don't know. You're good. You're good on the mic. We'll see where you come in.
Well, I mean, hey, Garth Brooks was lying to us all. He is the best-selling solo album artist ever. So he only has friends in high places.
Yeah,
so
that's
he's been
true.
lying his whole life. So
good point.
Fun little fact there.
Also, Garth Brooks' song "Ireland" may be one of the best songs ever made. And Keith, as an Irishman, you should listen to that song.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's almost hard to find. It's like not even released anymore. I don't even think it's on Spotify. But
wow.
Yeah.
Sleeper.
His music you also can't play on YouTube. Somehow he's made it impossible.
Yeah, so that's how I used to listen to Ireland, because Ireland's like a good pump up song. It's kind of like these Irish guys like going into battle to protect Ireland. It's like very Braveheart, except not Scotland. So yeah, check it out. My first talk down is Ivy Leaguers in general. So all the bad guys in this are pretty much Ivy Leaguers. And the way that they're explained or described in the book is they're rapey. They're huge fans of babysitter porn and infidelity. They also are just somehow dumb. You know, they're just really dumb for being smart. So I guess being in the Ivy League doesn't necessarily make you smart, because they hire gangbangers to kill Reece. But the guys, like these guys, don't even wait to confirm he's in the house before killing his wife and kid, which just seems like that'd be a huge shitstorm and like the news would be all over that. So they don't even wait for that. So that seems like a bad business decision to hire those gangbangers to do it. And then additionally, probably even more absurd, is they hire like the jihadi assassin they hire has never fired a weapon in his life, and they hire him to kill an extremely well-trained and angry Navy SEAL who's most likely carrying a weapon. It didn't really check out from a, thought experiment.
I mean, kid, he lives in California. You can't shoot guns there. The gun laws are terrible. I mean, it's awful in California. So that's why he couldn't do it.
Don't get ahead to my second stock down, okay? But yeah, so I think these Ivy Leaguers, it was probably more nepotism that got them into these smart schools and that got them in their high places than actual smarts, because they did not handle this well whatsoever. Bob, did you have a stock down?
Yeah, so my first stock down is going to be have to be coffee with cream and sugar. So if there's anything that says you're not a Navy SEAL to me, it's if you don't drink your coffee black. This is pretty much what I think of when I think of Keith. Just lots of cream, lots of sugar, and nothing good coming out of it.
Extra light, extra sweet.
I mean, my boy James Reece drank it that way, so that's all I got to do. That's actually one of the only things Jack Carr was like letting its guard down for, the coffee thing. He's like, you know what? I like my coffee with like, you know, a little cream and sugar in it. And usually everything else he's like, I like my steak rare. I like my cars American. I like my fucking women. I don't know what he said about women. But, you know,
my women American.
I like my women faithful or something. I don't know. He's very, you know, by the book with everything else. So it's kind of surprising.
Yeah, so I was going to wait to get into this, but I think we should just get into it now because we're talking about it. How do we feel about Reece in general? Because one of the positives I had was that he was open to the idea of like, hey, I don't need to drink black coffee to be tough. Like, I can enjoy a latte. There's nothing wrong with that. I can enjoy a light beer. I don't need to have this highfalutin Seattle IPA Ballast Point bullshit. I can have a Coors Light.
Good, sir.
No, I know, but I'm just saying he's down to just drink a Coors Light and hang out. But he did fat shame a stripper, and he called her pregnant, and she might not have been pregnant, probably wasn't. And he also hates condiments, which I'm a huge condiment guy. And I think that if you're in the field and you're eating MREs, which are disgusting, you need the condiments. You need the hot sauce. You need whatever they give you on the side to beef it up. So I didn't really like that about him. But those are my points. What do you guys feel about Reece? Are we on Team Reece or are we off Team Reece?
So I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a huge Team Reece fan. But I would say the coffee thing threw me off a little bit. But I think Jack Carr must drink his coffee like that. Otherwise, I don't know why he did it. The only other thing I could think about is he had to give Reece a flaw, so maybe that's his flaw. He doesn't like condiments and he doesn't like coffee.
Yeah. And fat shame strippers.
But yeah, those are his flaws. Outside of that, he's pretty much perfect. So at least he had some flaws though. Like Vince Flynn didn't make any flaws
for
in Mitch-Rap. Yeah. So
he made him. He was too good at his job, kid. He knew he was too smart.
Yeah.
He was
too dedicated to the game.
Yeah, too dedicated. He cared too much. Nothing wrong with that.
And I think in the second Mitch-Rap book, he has a very long refractory period between having sex with Anna or whatever her name was. I think in that, you know, it's like
Anna Riley.
Yeah, Anna Riley. He's like, I can't go twice in 20 minutes. So you know that was a flaw for Mitch-Rap, and I might have just made that up.
21 minutes is like, you know, he's like, oh, good to go.
Keith, you Team Reece?
Well, I do think he has like kind of a negative view on anyone that's not military, which. You know, I'm a huge pussy, so I understand that. Like, he's a Navy SEAL. Everyone else kind of, compared to a Navy SEAL, is a spineless coward, which I completely get. But he also had, like, this, like, vendetta against people that, like, looked at their phones too much.
Yeah,
and, like, shitty drivers and, like, overweight people.
Yeah,
he's like,
people.
look at this piece of shit. And then people that, like, spent a lot of money on tattoos, even though I feel like most military people have tattoos. I was like, what is this guy, like... I feel like he's a mix between someone that's super open and super, like, old man yelling at clouds, you know what I mean? So I couldn't get a read on him, honestly.
He's, 40 in the book, so he's kind of like an old man SEAL, so I feel like he has a little bit of that,
that makes
personality
sense.
Where he sees the young cats coming in, tatted up, drinking their coffee black because it's macho and whatever else he doesn't like, and maybe kids using cell phones, and he's trying to just use pay-as-you-go phones, so... You know, I think he doesn't really like that.
He's like, I couldn't believe that after this explosion, people opened their phone to look at the news to see what happened. It's like, who would possibly look at the phone?
Nuts?
Yeah, I just watched a guy get vaporized, like literally turned into dust in front of my face. I can't believe these guys wanted to film it. Crazy. All right, Keith, what else do you have for stock down?
We're kind of overlapping here, but being a civilian was kind of a stock down and not being like in the military. But I will say one thing that I think I'm giving Jack Carr a little bit of a hard time. But if I were him, I would write this exact same book. What he does is basically he actually works in the field. He's a Navy SEAL. And all he's doing is writing a book about all the people he works with that he fucking hates. He's like, fuck NCIS. They're the worst. Like, fuck these generals that have never been in. I'm like, yes, I would do the same thing where you could just like write a book that's just a spite book where you're like talking about all the shit you don't like. And then you put it in a fiction part and you're like, yeah, this is just fictional. It's like, Oh, I get it. Like I understood what he's doing there, and I appreciate it actually.
It almost sounds like a Seinfeld episode or something. Like if Jerry just wrote a thing, or actually George would just write like a spite novel, and it just he's like asks Elaine to read it, and she's like, this is like half of this is about me. Like, what do you? I think this is me, right?
I do give him a little bit of shit for it, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I get it.
No, yeah, if you could, like, if I was gonna write,
if I was a good enough writer,
if I was a good enough writer and could write a book about, like the next Office Space or whatever, there would be a lot of people who would be like, this sounds very
why'd you use my name in this?
Why'd you use my first, last, and middle name? My next talk down is, and you've alluded to it, but it's California. It's a terrible state. I can't believe you both live there. I mean, and I quote, it's a state that has laws that dictate almost every aspect of daily life. You can't wipe your ass without the state coming at you and wanting to take a little piece of it. And I'm not talking a piece of that TP. They want some kickback. They don't let people carry guns wherever they want. I mean, he made that very clear, and I think that's bullshit. People should just be able to carry a gun wherever, whenever, it doesn't matter. Jack Carr was definitely pissed that, he's like, a Navy SEAL can't just like carry a gun. It's like, yeah, well, maybe when you're not like, overseas fighting Al Qaeda and you're just walking into Walmart, like maybe you don't need a gun. It's a crazy idea, but I'm not like, at Walmart seeing a guy that's dressed like he's pretend Navy SEAL and be like, is that guy Navy SEAL? Is he not? Well, he's got a gun, so I'm feeling better about myself. Like, yeah, but either way, California, terrible. Emission laws, he couldn't even drive his Land Cruiser around. There's only Tesla fill-up stations around. Couldn't pay for gas 'cause it's $7 a gallon. But he could light bonfires on the beach.
That's a good gripe.
No, that is a good gripe. No, it's a great gripe. But what I did think was funny was like the one thing we still have is we can have bonfires on the beach, which I'm pretty sure you like can't do in California, right?
No, they have like designated. It's not like you just post up a random place and just light a fire. They have spots where you can sit through the fire.
Oh, okay. So maybe he was right on that. But in general,
you get taxed on it though. You get taxed.
Yeah. It was like if people had like a game, a drinking game or whatever, and there was a drinking game associated with this book, it'd be every time he shits on California, drink, and you would be wasted in one reading session because he just shits on California left and right. Gridlock traffic, boom, drink. Bob, did you have any other stock down?
I'd say my only other stock down might be the book name, Terminalist, because to Keith's point earlier, it's pretty on the nose of exactly what it's about. So, not that that's a bad thing, but I don't think it could be any more obvious what it's about with his killing spree and also the fact that he's terminally ill.
Yeah, but I thought it was good. I thought it was double entendre or double meaning there.
Yeah.
No, it does. It does carry that. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's a stock.
Yeah, it could have.
Wow, you got
wanted to throw it out there.
Kids sold and then immediately bought back again. That was the quickest turnaround I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Hey, this stock went up pretty quick, so I had to buy it.
Yeah, he like sold all of his GameStop stock and then was like, no, I buy more GameStop. This could have been the other name for the Tom Hanks movie, The Terminal. It could have been just The Terminalist. He would be like, oh, I was going to gate A6. Like, no, it's A7. Like,
I wish they killed people in that movie. Jesus Christ, that movie sucked. I wish people were dying in that movie.
That movie's based on a true story. Some guy actually did that, which is crazy.
That movie was awful. I think we've talked about that on this pod, but that movie was terrible.
I don't think I've ever watched the movie, and I don't think I ever
Just
will,
the worst accent by Tom Hanks that's ever existed.
Oh, it's awful. It has good ratings, too, somehow. I have no idea how.
It's Tom Hanks, so you got to do it. Any other stock downs?
Throw a quick one out there. Childproof home, stock down. He has a 3-year-old at his house, and he's talking about, like, pulling off tomahawks and shit from the walls. And he's like, then there was my gun right there sitting on, like, the wall. I, like, historic. I'm like, wait, what? You literally have knives and swords on their walls, and you just have a 3-year-old walking around? I was like, all right, hey, more power to you. Like, luckily, California hasn't regulated that. Thank God.
Thank God. Well, it's also... Which he does talk about how he can't just like take guns off the base because he's like California. You just can't carry an AR-15 around. It's bullshit. But maybe he's trying to train Lucy there, his daughter, R.I.P. Maybe he's trying to train her to be a SEAL because these leftist government people are thinking about letting women in the SEALs. Can you believe that?
Was that brought up?
That was brought up in the book. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
Long live the brotherhood is what their quote is. So.
He's like, they're not caring about what's actually happening around. They're too busy trying to get women in the SEALs. Absurd. And what are they going to do? The enemy's going to smell them menstruating. All right, so I think that covers up. Bob, thanks for joining us for Stock Up, Stock Down. It was a blast. It's great to talk to you, and I'm glad you brought this book to our attention, my friend.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'll talk to you later.
All right, Keith, I think we don't need to necessarily drop in to pick your character, do we? I think we kind of covered it with our chat about Reece there, but if you had some more info...
In terms of just favorite character, I mean, I would probably go with Liz. I like the color of her jib.
The pilot?
Yeah, the pilot, yeah. I think you had mentioned it before. She's a true friend. She's like, you know what, you saved my life. I'm going to do whatever I can to, you know, fulfill my kind of role here. And that includes flying around everywhere. And, like, again, she's going to prison for 60 years.
Yeah, she's a real friend.
Or for
life.
She's
definitely a real friend.
I would definitely go out, you know, give that one fly to get, you know, someone out of trouble and then play ignorance. Oh, I didn't realize they were on the run. But once you're flying them around, like, across the country everywhere, you know, I don't know if that's a little bit much, but she's ride or die. And I appreciated that. And I also like the Southern accent and that even though she supports Alabama football, I don't think she's a bandwagoner. So I appreciated that also.
Yeah, if she just did the one flight, she could have done like, oh, he held me up at gunpoint or whatever.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, well, what were you doing in between when you were just like sitting on the tarmac and he was out and gone? Like you could have just flown away and called the cops and she'd be like, he tied me up, I guess. Like, yeah, you're kind of screwed. What happened when that cop stopped you and you played it off for him? Oh, I had a gunpoint, you know. And obviously he saved her life from torture and dismemberment and all sorts of terrible things. So you do owe someone to an extent, but
she went above and beyond.
Yeah, like
really.
The other guy who like gave him his boat was like, now we're even. It was like, now we're even.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And she like is literally doing everything to sabotage her own career and her own life. Although I did appreciate how Jack Carr wrote in like that Reece actually had a plan in terms of, you know, we're going to send you to Mexico. You're going to have a job. She didn't seem to have a family. So it was like, okay, that's chill. Like, I'll have a sweet job in Mexico and then, like, maybe be able to get back into the States. But he did say, whenever they ask about me, just agree with everything they say. It's like, there's only a limit that you can agree to before it's like, you know, you were definitely an accomplice in this. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I was a big Liz fan myself. She also just seems like a total badass, and I appreciate that. It's nice when you, in these macho bravado books, which are definitely geared and written towards men, it's nice to have a badass woman involved too, because even in like the Mitch Rapp stuff, usually the women are more timid, let's say.
Kennedy was like the best characters in those books.
Yeah.
I don't know why you sleep on her.
Yeah, I know. I do sleep on Kennedy, but not sexually, but you know what I'm saying.
Do you think it's sexual to sleep on someone?
Yeah, what?
What?
Some people are into that. There's a whole smushing section.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We don't yuck anyone's yum here, kid. My bad. Hand up.
What about your favorite scene? What do you have for a favorite scene?
The two, I think that we kind of touched on them, but the cutting off the dude's head in the mosque and then the unraveling the dude's intestine. I mean, those are pretty epic scenes. Both with the tomahawk. That's why that was the stock up there. And I already mentioned it too. It was kind of weird that like he gave the most gruesome shit to people that not the worst people out there. So that was kind of funny. They're all bad.
The mosque guy was an example of what you like, which is sending a message to the entire league. And by going to the mosque, cutting off the guy's head, and then impaling him on a spike in front of the mosque, hanging an ISIS flag. That sends a message not only to your adversaries, but also to your adversaries abroad. Hey, I'm on to you, and I'm coming for you.
The only problem with that was if he outwardly doesn't look like a terrorist, and you're just cutting off some random Muslim person's head, you're like, oh, this person's just attacking because we're Muslim. It's like, yeah, that's probably not the best look. You needed to like post like all this traitorous acts on his like, head, so everyone saw. You know,
yeah, exactly.
Give some context there.
If anything, he just radicalized like 10,000 more people.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Because it's just like, oh, this imam who runs this mosque that everyone likes, and he seems like a super nice guy. His deranged Navy SEAL just came in and cut his head off. Like, it's probably not going to show too good on the Al Jazeera news. But he wasn't really thinking about that. Also, I had a little bit of a concern with that scene, just in that he cuts off his hand basically, and then he like chops him with the tomahawk in the leg before cutting off his head. As he's walking through this mosque, I guess we're just supposed to assume that no one's in there anymore, but our boy would be covered in blood, like covered head to toe, like dripping in blood. And he's just like, yeah, I walked out to the mosque. I went on the front steps. Yeah, no one's there. hammering this guy's head onto a spike, like minding my own business. It's like you would be like literally dripping in blood. So I guess
been there before, D-Man?
Oh, I mean, yeah, but I did like that. My favorite scene might be the gangbanger house when he goes in like room to room and kills them all, because they're just like in their drunken revelry and like banging all these prostitutes. Actually, according to Jack Carr, 2 naked guys were, and I quote, pounding away at a prostitute. Like, bro, like that's how you're gonna phrase it? Pounding away? It seemed a little crass, but you know what?
Did you want it to be like making love to the prostitute? What would you want there, D-Man?
I don't know, just pounding away.
I didn't care for the adjective. It's fine. They're both banging a prostitute, but pounding? That's despicable.
Pounding away at it. Just, I don't know. It was a little much for me. But I like the idea of it almost being like, what's those Keanu Reeves movies? John Wick. It was like a John Wick scene with like lights flashing in this house, like some black lights and all this stuff, and him just like going in room to room and just putting these guys out one by one. And if some of these trafficked women get in the way, that's on them. That's not his fault. So, it's all about killing. He's saving lives. He's saving lives,
kid.
Okay, let's jump into love hate. Keith, what'd you love about The Terminal List?
I liked it as a quick read, fast paced. I mean, like the scenes really just played like we always talk about, like a movie in your head. Some of the stuff that we talked about earlier, which annoyed me, is that like you got taken out of those scenes because it was so much like I have a gripe with this, so I'm going to add it to the book, which I didn't care for. But that's his POV. He actually lives it, so I didn't have as much of a problem with it because of that. But I really did like that. It was gripping. It was a fun read.
Yeah, I mean, this ties into, it's the summer, it's a total dude beach read. I just went down to the beach and I just listened to it. I put my Tommy Bahama chair out, with the cooler in the back, cracked a twitty, and just sat there like listening to this guy behead people as these kids are playing Rover Red Rover next to me. And I'm just like, wow, like this is a lot of different shit going in my head that's happening at this beach, but it was a wonderful dichotomy. But yeah, I really enjoyed that as well. And also, who doesn't just like a solo man taking down a government conspiracy? I mean, hey, that trope just works. We're talking James Bond. We got Mitch Rapp, who we've already mentioned. Bob Lee Swagger. Jack Carr mentioned that he had read the book. I can't remember what book, like Influence Shooter, but he read that book. And as he was writing this book, had the idea of Antoine Fuqua, who directed the first episode of the TV show, who also did Training Day and did Shooter. He was like, this is the guy I want to direct the show eventually when it comes out. So he had that idea in mind, and it might be tropey, but it's a trope that works, so there's no problem with stuff like that. So I definitely like that as well. Okay, what about hate?
Yeah, hate, I think we also covered a lot of this, and this is more like probably a political argument, but he didn't want government oversight on him. This happens in a lot of these books where like, these people shouldn't have power to do all these things and things, but I should. It's like, but then there's people that are like you in your position that are bad.
Yeah.
That always doesn't make sense to me where they'll argue, oh, my group of people should do it because we're more just. It's like, but then the next person that comes along might not be that. So why would you give yourself more power? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I 100% agree with you. I will say that I can also understand the other side where it's like, hey, we've seen the shit. We're boots on the ground. We've seen all this stuff happen, and the people that are pulling the strings are these loser Ivy Leaguers who are just looking for votes and lobbyists and stuff like that. A lot of the stuff he said about like equipment, about them not being able to get the best equipment because of this stupid government bureaucracy, I'm totally on board with. I don't really like bureaucracy in general, but at the same time, like there needs to be checks and balances. Like that's how a good government works, in my opinion. So just you being able to go free reign because like we trust you is just not going to work. Like that's not going to thing. And I don't feel necessarily like this book at all, or Jack Carr was like pushing a political agenda outside of fuck California, but but there were times where, like, even the Secretary of Defense, who was leftist leaning, I kind of thought she made some good points. It was like he was kind of phrasing them to be like bad points in terms of like, oh, we got to support these guys with like PTSD and stuff like that. And I'm sure he supports, those kind of things as a person, but just the way that they made kind of like the left leaning points, he made them very like seem like they were like terrible, but
they do a better job in this show. So when you watch the show, you'll be like, oh, it's not as bad. Or, I mean, it's still bad, but it's not like, oh, it's not so black and white like it is in the book.
Yeah, he just made it seem like his points were like very clear and obvious and like.
But I guess the person that would go out and kill all these people has to have that mindset. They can't be like, well, maybe they were thinking, they have to be like, no, I'm right. This is how I'm going to do shit, So, which, if that's the character, that's the character, And
I do like how he did a kind of like Stanford prison experiment / like, the Tuskegee syphilis stuff, which if you read into that, it's fucking bonkers. The stuff government does is terrible a lot of the times.
I think we're all on the same page with him with like the government sucks. I'm like, yep, and the media sucks. I'm like, yes, I'm on board with all that stuff.
I'm on board with all of that, but at the same time, it's not like one person who's super trained or like a group of people who's super trained should just be like have free reign to have AR-15s in Walmart.
I also didn't like the fact that, well, one, I didn't really understand how he knew Ben was going to betray him.
Okay, so this is my other hate, too, so I'm glad we're getting into this.
How did he know he was going to betray him? He's like, I'm going to go up to, what was it, Maine or like New Hampshire or something like that, and just camp out and just like, but only Ben knows this, and I'll tell him. And it's like, well, how would you even think that he was going to like betray you?
Well, he thought about it because like Bob pointed out, or you pointed out, because he cheated on his wife.
Oh, he cheated on his wife, and he was like, I like Edward Snowden. He's like, oh, you must be a fucking traitor. Like, or he didn't like Edward Snowden. Sorry, Edward Snowden was against the government, so that's why he liked him. But then he's like, oh, I know they're going to send up like a team of like contractors and probably the FBI, and I'm going to fucking just like go to town on these motherfuckers. And then he's like, oh shit, there's Navy SEALs up there. Never mind. It's like, wait, so you're ready to kill FBI agents that were going to come that are innocent, just as innocent as anyone else. They have no idea, but you weren't going to kill them because they're Navy SEALs. It's like, that's kind of, I don't know, I didn't care for that. I was like, all right, that's kind of stupid.
I think this book needed that fun twist, and he tried to do it with Ben, but it just didn't make any sense. Like, they didn't build Ben up to be a big enough character for like the twist to be anything interesting. And then the twist itself was just like, oh, Ben lent me his house, and now the military's at my house, so Ben must be a traitor. Like, it didn't make it like, oh shit, it was just like, okay, cool. Ben being a bad guy, the twist itself wasn't interesting to me whatsoever. It had no aspect, and he was like, you're my best friend, and it was like, wait, this guy's your best friend? Like, it seemed like you guys were like cool, but he wasn't like your best friend.
Right.
Your best friend, I thought, was like Boomer or whoever had that got murdered. I thought that was your best friend,
or Marco, or Liz. Those people all seem to be much. Ben was just like, here's some information. It's like, okay, and then you get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Did he just like Ben because he said like bro all the time? Bro.
I mean, Timmy Riggins kills the role in the show.
Oh, does he?
I will say, he does a good job. But the thing is, at the end, you're actually like, no, like Timmy Riggins, no.
I wasn't a huge fan of all of the detail. I think there's a level to that, which I like, in terms of explaining what kind of weapons they're using and how his head's popping off. Like, that helps you visualize it. But when it gets to the point where he's explaining his entire equipment system and everything down to the T, or even when he shoots the Muslim guy, when he shoots him, he's like, I pressed down with my right index finger and it shot him through this muscle in this, like, I don't know anatomy. This book should be written for people that are not super smart. So unless you were a doctor, like a medic on a SEAL team, you wouldn't really be able to visualize like what he's talking about. It just took up a lot of pages. So some of that stuff.
I'd much rather have like the mentality of what the person's thinking than that.
Yeah.
Which I think Vince Flynn does an amazing job of, like, this is the reason I'm going in this way. Like, I put my back to the wall because, this is what I want to be checking out for. It's like, so you're almost like getting in the mind of the guy versus like, okay, this is what I was carrying and here's all the equipment. It's like, that doesn't get me into like the mindset. That's just like statistics.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, who cares?
I think that's a good point. I think Vince Flynn kind of explains it in a way where a layman is now understanding, oh, this is why he's doing this. I
like,
get
this
it.
is the fastest helicopter in the military. Was and this is the reason we use it, because you need to fly under the radar at a certain miles per hour. And it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And the other, it's like, this is the Chinook, da 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 da. It has this, and it's like, okay.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Where it's like, oh, it like he just explained the like weapon system he was using, but didn't say like why that is a preferred method. The only time that he did that I thought it was really good was when he's talking about suppressors, and he was like, oh, it actually doesn't make it that much quieter, but better for recoil, and it definitely like quiets it a little bit, but it's like all these other factors. Like, oh, okay, now I know why they're using suppressors. Like, I like to learn a little bit when I'm doing this, and I really felt like I was just being like told things as opposed to learning along with it. All right, let's get into listener mail. What do we have for listener mail?
You've got mail.
Sarah from Seattle, Washington. Liz Riley uses her boobs and southern accent to get out of a ticket from a police officer. What is your go-to move to do the same?
Oh, well, thank you for doing that, Sarah. But Liz Riley and Anna Riley. We have Anna Riley in the Mitch Rappo stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Huh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, sorry, the question was, she uses her breasts and southern accent to get out of a ticket. What do?
Yeah.
I cry like a baby. What do you mean? You just break down. I do the opposite. I'm the complete opposite of Reese. I would just be the biggest pussy that's ever existed, or I would just be like, oh my God, I don't know what I was doing. Like, I've actually done this before. I was in like high school or something, but someone was trying to go across a crosswalk and I didn't see him, and I just drove through the crosswalk and a cop was sitting right there and like pulled me over, and I was just like, oh my God, this is my stepmom's car. She's gonna be so upset with me. Oh my God, I've never had a ticket. I didn't even see
if you
them.
have to cry, you have to cry.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I was like I was faking like I was on the verge, and the guy was like, wow, loser. Hey.
He's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, my God. I did not think I thought this was going to be very standard.
It's a $50 ticket. Yeah. Oh my God.
I made him so physically uncomfortable by
that's the key.
By the weakness that I was showing, that he was like, I just need to get out of this situation because I'm uncomfortable for you.
Yeah. You go one end of the spectrum. Either go absolute disgust or incredible attractiveness. One of the two. You can't go in between.
What do you have? You flash a little leg?
Oh, so what I would do usually is put a southern accent on and pull my shirt down. So I'd pull the list. That's the answer. Hey there, officer. What can I help you with?
That's a terrible southern accent.
I knew I was going to butcher that. Damn it.
You went to school in the South.
Well, if I hear it, I pick it up usually. Yeah. So let's hear your southern accent.
Oh, well, officer, I thought you just need some cool lemonade. Maybe come down to my mama's place and we can do some rumbling in the hay piles.
Is anyone else turned on as much as I am right now? Jesus Christ. Can you give me some answering machine messages with that, boys?
I used to run a 900 number. That's how I got the money for my microphone. So we don't really need to cast the movie here, right? Like, they cast it, they did it. Do you have any...
No, I feel like I just watched the series so quickly that I can't.
Well, it is good to note that Jack Carr wanted Chris Pratt. Like he said, as he was writing this, which was in like 2015 or something, Chris Pratt hadn't done anything besides he saw him in a very small role in Zero Dark 30 and was like, this is my guy. He's like, I want this guy. And I think you probably heard this from the Rogan one, but we'll repeat it here in case anyone listens to us instead of Joe Rogan. But one of his SEAL buddies, who he hadn't talked to in a long time, caught up with him and said, like, hey, like, he told him he was writing a book. He was like, oh, that's great. And he said he could send him a copy of it. And he was like, can you send me another copy? I have a friend who wants to read it. And it was Chris Pratt, who, like, Jack Carr wanted to play this part. So he was like, oh, of course. And before the book even got released, Chris Pratt bought the option to make it into a movie or a TV series, which is pretty crazy turn of events, especially, this is the guy you want to play him, and then he just bought the rights to it. So I thought that was a pretty cool story. All right, let's get to it. Terminal List, Keith, would you recommend it?
Yeah, it's probably more of a guy's book, but if you like a Gray Man, you like a Vince Flynn, this is right up that vein. I think it's one of the better stories or like concepts that I've read from one of these action books, so I really appreciated it. There are some things, again, that I mentioned that take you out of the book, but if you like those type of things, you're gonna like this book. I don't think there's anyone that's that's going to be like, I like those two, but I didn't like this one. I think that's right in the same vein. I think it's very solid.
Yeah, especially considering it's the summer and the TV series has just come out. I mean, I know Libby, the request for this book, like, went insane when they, like, it was like a month before, like last month when this thing was going to come out. So I figure a lot of people are on board. But yeah, definitely a guy's book. But if you're at the beach, whatnot, this is the perfect kind of book. It's an easy read, pick up, put down, have a good time with, enjoy the battles, and some guy dragging his intestines around a tree and then eventually getting eaten by critters. Okay, so we're gonna be on a brief hiatus, but what do we have coming up next?
The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. We already read one of her novels.
Daisy Jones and the Six.
Daisy Jones and the Six, yeah. So this is supposed to be her more popular book. So looking forward to that.
Cool. Well, everyone out there, thanks for listening. Terminal List. Check out us, check out the book, check out the show on Amazon Prime, and let us know what you think. Until then, bye now.
Bye now.